Hi everybody, my name is Steve Schwartz. I head up public affairs here for Tableau, and I'm thrilled you're all here with us on a webcast. We have a very, very special opportunity, something that's actually never happened in the history of Tableau before. The entire Tableau Foundation team is together on air and ready to talk about what we do. You may have seen, if you tuned in for the keynote this week, very big week for the Tableau Foundation. CEO Adam Slipsky announced on stage on Tuesday that the Tableau Foundation has pledged $100 million in grant making through the end of 2025. It's an extraordinarily exciting time for the four of us and for the company as a whole. You know, there's an incredible opportunity for us to do some great things, help people use data and analytics to really take on some of the world's toughest problems. So what we kind of wanted to do this morning was pull back the curtain a little bit, talk about what the Tableau Foundation is, where it comes from, how we work, the kinds of things we've seen help and change communities. So, as we talk a little bit about moving forward, let's take a little look back. Neil, if you want to step in the Wayback Machine here, take me back to 2014. How did Tableau Foundation come about?
That's a great question, Steve. It's a great story. So we were founded in 2014. And we were funded by pre-IPO stock that the founders in the company contributed. And we were founded with a mission to encourage the use of facts and analytical reasoning to solve world problems. And I remember when I started in May of 2014, the first thing I did was actually interview anyone who would talk to me. So I called foundations, nonprofits, friends, family, and I asked one question, and I said, Tableau has this mission, and how do they recommend we actually invest our resources, which is really our people, product, and money, in achieving that mission? And what was interesting is nearly everyone I talked to said the first thing you have to do is get your product out there, because your product could be transformative. The second thing they said is you should get your people out there, because the nonprofits often don't have the skills or capacity to use data well, and so Tableau's skilled people could actually really help. And then number three, they said that money is helpful, but that we'll never be able to spend enough money to move the dial on an important world problem. And that advice has really been the foundation of how we operate our foundation.
Excellent, and so you go from those initial conversations, a lot of coffees, a lot of phone calls, to where we are today. We've got this mission, use facts and analytical reasoning to solve problems. How does that translate into sort of a day-to-day context when you're on the phone with prospects or grantees and us?
We've discovered over time that we're unique grantees or unique funders in the sense that we achieve our mission by donating, at least in the direct mission-oriented sense, by donating software, training, and financial support. And we do it we make those grants to organizations who have a vision for how they think they could use data to accelerate progress on solving some important world problem that they care about. And so, because it's that combination of product training and financial support, we really have to find organizations that sort of have the vision, that are ready to invest their time and capacity in using data better. And then we don't like to come across as though we're selling our product. So ideally it's organizations who already know sort of what Tableau could do, or at least have a notion of what it could do, and strongly believe that Tableau could actually be a transformative component for their organization.
Excellent. And so I'm going to kick it down to Ashley for a second. You talked about the problems organizations are running into and what they're looking to do. Yeah. Ashley, you run all of our employee giving and volunteering programs, including the skilled volunteering work. When you talk to nonprofits about things like Tableau Service Corps engagements, what are the types of things they're usually looking for help on?
It really ranges, and that's part of the beauty of having such a strong community, both of our employees and our partners and our external community, is that on Service Corps, our skilled volunteering program that's open to all nonprofits globally, we have hundreds of volunteers, and they're some of the the best Tableau experts in the world. So we have small nonprofits that come there opening Tableau for the first time and they just want some hand-holding. And we have some of our grant partners that are working on super complex challenges, and they're able to hook up with Zen masters and experts who can really get them that really one-on-one help with everything from mapping to calculations to complex table joins. So yeah, it's been really fun to see that.
That's great. That's awesome. So actually, one of those partners, we have a terrific story, is presenting here this week at TC in the Expo Hall, an organization called Splash. They do clean water and sanitation for kids living in large urban areas, India, Ethiopia, and Nepal. But they have kind of a funny story. It really started as a very simple question. Do you want to tell the Splash story a little bit?
Yeah, happy to. So we have a program for small nonprofits called Tableau for Nonprofits. And
very creatively named.
Yes, thank you. Tableau is very focused on naming things what they are. And that allows small nonprofits around the world to get some Tableau desktop licenses for a very minimal fee. And so Splash got one of those licenses and then connected with Tableau Service Corps. And Tableau Service Corps actually helped them sort of learn and use Tableau to start discovering what's hidden in their data and the insights. And that has actually built over the last few years into just a really big part of their operation. And then they went from being sort of getting the free license from Tableau for Nonprofits to becoming grantees, and then now we're talking with them about how do we actually scale this work even broader.
That's fantastic. It really is, on a day-to-day basis, really driven by
Absolutely.
And Jason, so you head up all of our US-based grant making, and I know you I sit next to you, spend a ton of time on the phone building those relationships and working with our partners. You know, what, in your world, how is that maybe... how does that compare and contrast with Splash's experience? You know, is there a partner you want to give an example of?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the partners that that we've actually had as a presenter here at Tableau Conference this week is one called Equal Opportunity Schools. They're a nonprofit that works with school districts throughout the country, and they end up helping to identify students, generally students of color, who wouldn't be identified and flagged for AP and IB programs within their schools.
IB being?
IB being International Baccalaureate,
Gotcha.
and AP being Advanced Placement. So these kind of college prep courses. And so Equal Opportunity Schools is doing two important things here. What they're doing is they're helping schools be more efficient and identify the right students for these advanced courses, but they're also addressing equity issues that we end up having in our schools and our society. And so they're doing both of these missions, they're doing it effectively. And since they ended up starting using Tableau, they've gone from having about 40 organizations that they're working with nationwide to about 350. And that's all by adding one staff member. And so that scale just is incredible to kind of think about. And it's been great being able to work with them and hear their story and try to help them also as they've gone along with this journey.
Yeah, and you mentioned equity issues. You know, as we announced this week, talking about, we do a lot of work in global health, we do a lot of work in equality and equity issues, supporting organizations working on poverty and homelessness programs, and then addressing climate change. You know, these are four big buckets, but I know there's a lot of work underneath that things sort of silo. And it sounds like Equal Opportunity Schools, you know, the school is one touch point, but not necessarily the only touch point in the community. And being able to bring multiple grantees who may be working around the same issue. Everybody's talking data, everybody's talking Tableau. We had a terrific experience this week, if you want to share a little bit.
So this week, what we ended up doing as a pre-session to Tableau Conference is we ended up hosting some of our grantees. We brought them to Tableau Conference and did a pre-convening around how to build a data culture within your organization. And one of the things that we found a couple of years ago that, I mean, was a huge challenge was that we were helping organizations get licenses, we were helping them get funding to use those licenses, but we weren't necessarily seeing quite as much adoption and takeoff as we thought that we would. And part of what was happening there is it was dealing with building a culture of data, and that that type of culture is very specific, and it's very difficult to build in many cases. And so by running events like this Tableau Foundations Summit and others, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to help these organizations learn best practices and hear from people who have successfully done this so that they can go back to their organizations and do the same.
Is it, and I'll open the question to everybody, is in a way Tableau's culture as a company sort of starting to seep into the work we're doing, or is it the opposite direction where they start using the product and it starts opening up new conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it usually starts with someone who's a really interested analyst, someone who is in the weeds of the data, who's really interested in working with us. But what we found is it requires both that type of level, people who are working with the data on a day-to-day basis, but it also requires the leaders within the organization to understand that this is something that's important to adopt. And so it's that dual prong that's really important for organizations to achieve this type of excellence.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a secret sauce to this kind of work. I know, Neil, from the very beginning, there's a lot we talk about, or we've had highlighted to us, makes Tableau pretty unique. Can you share some of the other things that we do that most of our, whether they're corporate philanthropists or large foundations, may do a little different?
Yeah, I think, and we hear this feedback, we've been hearing it this week from our grantees actually, and a few things that we do differently. One is when we provide financial support, it's fully unrestricted. We believe actually that if you're going to build a relationship with the nonprofit and trust with the management team, that if you give them unrestricted funding versus restricting the funding to some narrow focus area, it really allows them to be nimble and do the things they need to do to be successful. So that's one. The other one is we don't really think of ourselves as funders. We actually think of ourselves as partners. So when we partner with a group like Splash or Equal Opportunity Schools or Community Solutions, they are experts in their field. And we don't know enough about water and sanitation. We don't know enough about homelessness just on our team. And so we sit down at the table with them as equals, and we bring our core competency, which is visual analytics, and we just match it and connect it with their core competency, which is their specialty. And together we build things. And Seth Cochran, who's the executive director of Operation Fistula, who's one of our grantees, was describing us to somebody else, and he described us as more of an operating foundation. And in kind of nonprofit lingo, what that means is it's not a foundation that sort of gives something and then steps back and then stays disconnected. It's a foundation that actually invests and stays connected with a nonprofit to help advance the mission together.
And actually, this, I think, is a big thing you see, particularly working with a lot of our employees, too. Not everybody, their first job in life was at Tableau. There's a lot of people who come in with different skills and passions. And, as you are continually talking to people, what are some of the things that sort of surprise you about the way, yes, we are a team of 4, but we are also kind of a team of 3,800 because everybody in the company is bringing in something into the work?
No, I mean, it's such a cool community to be a part of, and we have so many people that have serious passions and interests in the social impact space, and just going back to kind of like what Neil was saying before about how we like to partner on a really level playing field. I think it definitely helps that 3 of us worked at nonprofits previously, and that's kind of seeped into the program design that I think Neil did a really intentional job of setting up, even on the employee-facing programs. We make sure that if we're going to do a volunteer event with the organization, we also want to provide a matching gift because we know that's work for an organization. It's great for community building, but it's work. So, and the same way with the Service Corps, we've really put the driver's seat, the nonprofits in the driver's seat in the Service Corps, because they're the one who gets to choose which volunteer they want to work with, because they know the kind of help they need, and we want it to be more time responsive. So I think that's helped a lot in my perspective, yeah.
And I think one other thing that we do that's kind of different along those lines is, I mean, you think that for being a foundation that's come out of a data company, that we ask our grantees for a lot of data, and it's actually the opposite. And one of the reasons that we do this, I mean, we want grantees to end up talking with us on essentially their terms. We want them to pull together things that aren't going to require efforts as by way of updates or asks for help or requests for technical assistance. We want them to be able to spend their time working on the causes that they're dedicated to, not working with us as a funder and kind of meeting our needs. And so we try to make that as easy of a relationship as possible, because we know that might not be the way that all organizations end up operating.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this a little bit. For anybody who saw the keynote this week, we told the story of PATH, a global health organization that is working on an analytics system that is helping ministries of health in developing countries, test, track, and treat cases. In this case of malaria, it's actually a concept that can go to any communicable disease. That is a project, Neil, that had an incredible amount of partnership positioning go into it. It is not just PATH and Tableau or PATH and Tableau in the Ministry of Health in Zambia, but we have a whole coalition of partners in place there, and it really came from that honest conversation with the partner saying, hey, if we also had X, it might help. And I know you were quick to pick up the phone and call some of these folks.
Yeah, that's been a fun project. So I love to tell the story about how the project really started at a coffee shop in Seattle. And the insightful thing to me was the woman at PATH who proposed the project to me. And literally this, I think, was like 41 days after we launched the foundation. So it was the very first person to ask for something from us, which was fun.
You actually have the number.
I do. I looked at email, and I remember she asked, how would you like to help us eliminate malaria in Zambia? And what was unique about that is she didn't ask for free licenses, she didn't ask for money, she asked for help. And that question just really sat in my head, and it's really been sort of one of the bedrocks of how we think about doing our grant making. Is it's more around not what can we give, but how can we help. And specific to the project in Zambia, it started with Tableau and PATH, and then we built it iteratively over time. And so we got to a point in time where the data transformation the data had to go through from sort of the system Zambia was using to get it ready to go into Tableau and be visualized. That data transformation process was really complicated. And so the Tableau Zen Masters, who actually were involved in the project, suggested that we look at Alteryx, which is a technology partner. And so I literally called the CEO of Alteryx, Dean Stalker, and I said, Dean, we have this great project in Zambia to eliminate malaria by 2021. I need your software for free for 5 years. Are you in? And he said yes. Yeah. And then later on, because we were doing a lot with hydrology and climate and other data, we needed Exasol for a fast in-memory database. And so we called Aaron, the CEO of Exasol, and asked him the same question. Fast forward, we now have Alteryx, Exasol, Mapbox, Digital Globe, and Twilio in as technology partners. And then we have Slalom, Datablick, and Interworks, who are consulting and training partners who are also lending a hand. And so the tremendous outcomes that Zambia is seeing from this project are really a result of the collaborative efforts of Tableau, its employees, the Zen Masters, and our technology partners.
Yeah, and that collaboration, I mean, you mentioned the Zen Masters, but we probably shouldn't gloss over this.
Oh man, it's huge.
They have been incredibly generous with their time and their impressive talent, not just for the malaria project, but
almost every project we do, actually.
Yeah, there's some Zen Master somewhere in the system, and we're eternally grateful for it. And I know the organizations are incredibly grateful because
absolutely,
there's an imagination gap as they're getting started with Tableau, and to have one of the world's finest experts come in and help you with it, it can be a very powerful thing.
And in fact, the Zen Masters have been so well engaged and so meaningfully impactful on these projects that last year at TC 17, we started giving the Tableau Foundations and Master of the Year award, and it was given to Anya Ahern, who's just one of my favorite people in the world. And then tonight at TC18, we're going to be awarding this year's Tableau Foundations and Master of the Year award. So stay tuned.
We're not going to say who yet.
No, we can't.
The betting pool is open.
That's right.
The betting pool, the line starts at $250.
For a $20 million donation to the foundation, I'll tell someone. Just kidding.
Put it in the comments.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, you talk about the role of the community here as well, and I think the community has been a really interesting source of potential partners for us as well. You have these initiatives, Makeover Monday, Biz for Social Good. We have current and prospective partners who've really come onto our radar through those programs. It's an exciting way to get a hold of us, and that really is the art of doing this kind of work. It ultimately comes down to the relationships, and the Tableau community is a remarkable network for doing that. So let me ask a slightly different question. What has surprised us along the way? What felt like a failure that maybe turned into an opportunity? I think we'd be lying if we said we got everything right out of the box. Jason, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on what we could have done better?
I mean, the culture thing was something that really was difficult for us to overcome. And I mean, a lot of places where we ended up seeing that our grantees weren't being able to pick up Tableau as quickly as they wanted to, and we thought they would be able to. That felt like a failure for us in terms of, almost our inability to help them. And so, it took time for us to figure out exactly, and we don't have it entirely figured out. It differs case to case, but being able to offer some tools around helping build a data culture within these organizations, that's been a big win for us, because we didn't know that was going to be such a significant thing that we would focus on when we started this work.
Ashley, I don't know, does anything stand out from your work?
Yeah, I think for me, my failure, it's a good thing, but a challenge is when we first opened Service Corps. I think we were a little nervous that we might have a flood of nonprofits requesting help and not enough volunteers to take up the requests, but we actually had the opposite thing happen. Our community just showed an outpouring of support, and we had hundreds of volunteers, both employees and external partners that signed up, and we didn't have quite as many nonprofits coming through to utilize their services. So like I said, that's an amazing problem to have, and another sign of how strong and caring our community is. But now we're seeing, as people come through the Service Corps and get repeats, and the nonprofit community is figuring out that this actually is a free resource they can use, that's upticking a little. So, yeah.
And I think we had this thing that I sort of think of as perceived failures. I remember actually when Jason joined my team, Jason and I talked about how if we don't have failures, we're not pushing hard enough. And Jason used to, come talk to me and go, "We don't have any failures yet. What's going on?" And but then we had these things that I call perceived failures, and that was we've had some grantees that went dark for 6 or 9 months. We didn't hear from them. Didn't really see much coming out of their, on their websites to indicate they were using Tableau. And then Jason and I started planning these check-ins, which is basically we would invite the nonprofit to do a show and tell via WebEx or in our office. And we had a couple come in, and they absolutely blew our minds. And so we had this kind of perceived failure, but it turns out when we invited them to talk about the work they're doing, it just was crazy good. And I think that was a surprise, actually.
And, that was a consequence of kind of how we end up operating.
Yeah.
We've intentionally put in place this model where we don't want to ask nonprofits to report to us in a specific regimented way. And in these cases, the reason that these organizations hadn't come back to us to end up telling us what they were up to is everything was running smoothly, everything was good. Exactly. And so we didn't necessarily know that, but things were good for them, and ultimately, that's what we want. So,
and I think there was enough flexibility for these organizations to pivot. It's something that happens very naturally. Yeah. You're talking about not always the most data-rich environment. And once you really start getting into it, you learn a heck of a lot along the way. And those, as I think through just inventory in my head, 75% of projects have involved some significant strategic pivot at some point.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we've really seen, and is super significant here, is that this stuff takes time. This stuff takes a long time, and so all of our grants are set up as 3-year grants that we have all intents to keep renewing, so long as Tableau is a useful tool for the organizations that are working with it. Because this culture, but also the software, this can oftentimes take months and years to really get into a full deployment where it's where the nonprofit vision has really been. And so we've realized that this stuff takes time, and that the way for us to end up being the best partners that we can is to end up working with organizations and helping them overcome hurdles, as opposed to expecting to see immediate results.
Yeah, and I think that's Jason brought up an important point about what is different about us, I think, to some degree, is so we do give the 3-year grants and training and financial support in many cases, and it does take time. And the time that we always say this, the technology part's easy. It's the people and the change management that's really hard, and that's the part that takes a long time. The other thing is, when we committed to the Visualize No Malaria initiative, we committed to a 5-year campaign, a 5-year initiative, because at the time, the goal of the Ministry of Health of Zambia was to be malaria-free by 2021. And I remember going to our CEO, Christian Chabot at the time, and saying, if we're going to commit to helping Zambia eliminate malaria, we have to commit to the entire time frame, because you can't cure malaria in a year. And if we string together sort of annual grants that are somewhat risky for the nonprofit, they're not going to be able to actually set their feet and actually really go after the goal. And so we're on multiple projects now, we're committing to achieving a particular goal in a particular time frame, and we're committing to support that project all the way through the end.
Yeah, and on the back of that, I think, we were talking earlier about relationships. One of the other things we've seen come out of that patience and that willing to experiment is that also our grantees are willing to help each other. Part of, the work that Pat's doing in malaria involves building trainings specifically for health workers in sub-Saharan Africa. Well, we have a handful of organizations that are working somewhere in the health sector there, and I know PATH and Operation Fistula are talking about having some trainings coming out that way. Another partner of ours, Headwaters Economics, Patty Goody, who also presented this week here at TC, she has talked to several of our other partners who are in the advocacy space about how to best use visualizations to affect policy change. Headwaters is focused on sort of that intersection of environmental policy and urban planning, and they're a small shop out of Bozeman, Montana, that had primarily focused on life in the American West, and through their use of Tableau, they've been able to grow, really to look at these issues much more nationally. And through that growth, they're more than happy to hop on the phone with, say, one.org over in London to talk about, well, how can they do their advocacy for, development assistance to continue to support and fight extreme poverty. There are incredible connections that come out of this community, even within the foundation arena, this community that we've put together. And that is incredibly exciting to see them working together.
It totally is.
So with that, I'll ask each of you, we've got a big mandate now. Over the next 6 years, is there something you want to try, something you want to do, something you're interested in, hoping we can spend some time working on? I don't know, Ashley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think my big challenge right now is we've talked a lot about community and how willing our community and partners are to support these causes that we're working on. And my challenge is to find a way to tap into all of that support and create something that can be really powerful for any nonprofit that wants to utilize. It's just kind of harnessing that energy in the right way.
Yeah, that's great.
I want to see us have a big success in helping organizations that are helping those who are experiencing homelessness be able to kind of build better data systems to do that work more efficiently. That's a huge challenge right now, both in our home city of Seattle, but also within the U.S. in general. And I think that we can play a role in helping this process move along.
And we actually have a partner here at TC, Community Solutions, that is doing that. They're refining a lot of best practices around how you can, across a continuum of care, be able to use data to help really make sure people are getting the support they need when they need it. Neil, anything you'd like to add?
When I think about sort of the commitment Tableau has made, it's a huge opportunity and it's also a huge responsibility. And we are really conscientious about wanting to make sure that the work we do is really authentic and that it's really focused on moving the dial on an important issue. And so it actually takes a lot of work to find the right opportunities that are actually going to move the dial on an important issue. And honestly, I hope like at the end of 2021, we're drinking champagne because Zambia is announcing they're malaria-free. And then I hope by 2025, we are helping end chronic and veteran homelessness in U.S. cities. I mean, these are like really concrete goals that we're committing to with our partners.
Yes.
And I hope we just have champagne like every year because one of our partners is actually celebrating their success.
That's fantastic. So you heard us, Tableau. A lot of champagne to come. There's a lot of work to be done this week. The announcement was a wonderful first down. We're not at the touchdown yet. Plenty of ways to go, but very excited and couldn't have done it without you.
That's basketball, right?
That is basketball,
right.
Correct. You got a hat trick. For anybody on the live stream, if you look below, the full schedule of the remaining activities for the day, plenty of sessions to come. Thanks for spending some time with us. We love to talk about what we do and are thrilled to share it with you. So thanks very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.